Back, everybody. My name, if you have just joined us, is Daniel Lanyon, Editor-in-Chief of AltFi. In this session, we'll be discussing a lucrative area of financial services, but one historically neglected by fintech. We'll be asking private wealth, is it ripe for disruption? So joining me to discuss this topic, we have Mintu Bandari, Managing Director and Founder of Monument. Hi, Mintu.
Hello.
How are you, and where are you joining us from today?
I am actually in New York. I'm usually in London.
Excellent, excellent. How's everything in New York? I imagine it's sort of sweltering temperatures and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Warm and humid. I'd rather be back in London, where it's usually, humid,
mild and humid.
So warm.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. So also joining us is Gareth Johnson, Head of Digital Channels at Bruin Dolphin. Hi, Gareth. How's it going?
Hey, very well. How are you guys?
Excellent stuff. Very good. And Gareth, how are you, and where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Newcastle, which is also very warm and humid today as well, unnaturally.
Okay, excellent. Wow. So last up, but not least, we have William Rouse, Director for UK and Europe at Contemi Solutions. Hi there, William. How's it going?
Very well, Daniel. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, very, very well indeed. And where are you joining us from today, William?
A rather sunny Yorkshire, actually. Normally in London, but I'm in the north of the country, and it looks like I'm in a prison cell at the moment. But I was supposed to be presenting from the conservatory, but the dog has pulled rank, and I'm in a box room instead.
Excellent. Well, my own dog just started barking just before we came on air, so I was sort of hushing her, and she has luckily acquiesced. But I sort of see we have New York and Old York, which is kind of cool, isn't it? I think that's a first. So okay, so let's sort of dive into the subject. I would set the scene by saying that fintech continues to democratize this sort of financial planning and advice to the masses and free stock trading and that sort of thing. But affluent and high net worth clients, I think, particularly historically, have been underserved as technology improves the wealth management experience for millions. So perhaps after a slow start, I guess we're asking, will the private wealth sector finally be approaching its fintech moment? Let's just do a quick introduction to everyone's various part in the digital wealth / private wealth industry. Gareth, perhaps we'll start with you. Obviously, Bruin Dolphin, a very long-established wealth manager, and I think I'm right in saying there's about sort of 50 billion of assets under management, which, if you want to put it into context, I think that's about 15 nutmegs. But maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Bruin Dolphin.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that intro. So yes, we are well established. 1762 was when Bruin Dolphin started. So you could perhaps say we're the oldest fintech in town, perhaps, maybe.
I've heard that one before.
You've heard that one before. I guess the key thing is for us, we are very much looking to work with a variety of clients and help them on their wealth journey. The reason I say that is because we now have digital services where you can invest from just £500, and that goes all the way through to receiving advice and into our core branch network and into our 1762 offering, which would be for the high net worth and ultra high net worth. My role as head of digital channels, without giving sort of a CV and things I've done, is really just to stay curious, and I guess in many respects look at what is coming down the track. How do we help our clients? How do we make our services relevant? And how do we continue on that journey that was established in 1762?
Excellent. Mintu, do you want to go next? I guess you're a little bit more recently founded.
Yes, Monument's a relatively new bank. We were authorized in October of last year, AWR. We're currently in mobilization. Our area of focus is the mass affluent. So we're targeting people that are actually below the ultra high net worth bank sort of personal net worth range of 250K to 5 million. Essentially, we're competing with or targeting HSBC Premier, Barclays Premier, NatWest Premier customers, Citi Gold. We think that is a segment that is really very, very underserved. That there's really, I'd say, not much real true premier banking that actually exists. So we're trying to deliver that with technology.
Okay, excellent stuff. And William, could you give us a little bit of an introduction to Contemi?
Absolutely. So, Contemi Solutions is a global provider of digital and technology solutions to the global financial service industry. Our solutions span the insurance, wealth, and asset management spaces, as well as the banking and capital markets. And we've traditionally catered a full front to back office solution offering. But over the last 10 years, I suppose now, we've started to modularize components of our offering to really, I suppose the aim there is to enable our clients to effectively have the best of both worlds. So they can effectively pick and choose the solutions that meet their requirements best. I suppose one of the ways in which we fit into the private wealth space is by working with a variety of industry participants, from managers and their and I suppose actually managers, advisors, and planners, through to specialist consultants, as well as regulatory and industry bodies. And I suppose really part of, I suppose we play a key role in the industry by empowering our clients, enabling them to operate more efficiently. And ultimately our role is to really, our role in this space is very much as an enabler.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So let's move on to some questions. But before we do, just a quick reminder to the audience that you can ask a question in the Hop-In tab, and you can we'll get to that towards the end of the session. We'll also be closing our poll. Please do vote. It's asking, will the future of digital wealth be super apps or standalone platforms? So do go and vote now. So let's maybe just sort of define our terms a bit when looking at the private wealth market. What do we mean? What sort of demographics and level of net wealth are we looking at? Gareth, maybe do you want to start and give us a sense of, I mean, you obviously gave us a little bit of a sense in your introduction, but if you could just sort of unpack that for us a bit further.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I think if we think of a traditional wealth management client, they're likely to be in their mid-60s. They might be approaching at or in retirement, and they'll have varying degrees of assets. I think when we think about wealth management, it's often that, sort of £750,000 and above kind of thing. And I think that's traditionally where wealth managers have had their bread and butter. They've been the clients that we've seen in our branch network, and they've been the clients who have typically sought advice and then passed that down through the generations. So again, certainly for us, we're very proud that we've served many generations of clients, and that passes that wealth down through the generations. I think over the last 5 to 10 years, what we've tried to do is make this a little bit more accessible. And now we see clients who join us for the first time with £500, and that is their wealth, and that is their investment. And then they move through our services. We've recently introduced more services for high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals as well, and that goes up the scale. But certainly what we're trying to do is attract people at an earlier stage of their wealth journey. So instead of it being at retirement or at retirement, it's can we capture those 55-year-olds, 44-year-olds, 33-year-olds, 22-year-olds? Can we capture the JISA community, those young children of clients and potential clients, etc.? So that's one of the key things for us. How do we go and access those, and how do we create relevant services that really add value to those different demographics?
Okay, very, very interesting. Mintu, you did obviously talk a bit about the clients you'll be going after, that sort of more mass affluent. Do you think that there is, I guess, a realistic prospect of disruption in that area? And could you maybe liken it to the disruption we've seen, I guess, from neobanks? Obviously, I know obviously you're a bank, but for particularly this sort of private wealth services, is there sort of a, will it work, basically, is my answer.
I think it will. I think that what we're looking at, though, is a combination of sort of evolution and erosion. I don't think that it's going to happen overnight. I think you're going to see technology come along that starts to peel away advantages from existing players and overcome the inertia that exists. There's quite a lot of inertia in this market. So I believe that you'll see in our case, we see HSBC Premier, Barclays Premier, the others as, very, very old school, very slow moving, lots of legacy issues. And they're really ripe for peeling away customers for various things. And our target is not to steal customers, but to share customers. And the idea is that people will multi-bank. We can offer certain things that are really valuable to them that they can't get elsewhere. And it's really about delivering it through technology. So I believe that, not only in banking, but in wealth, you will see an evolution and erosion of the legacy players towards the people that have, more robust capabilities. And let me just go a little bit further to give you a little bit of a vision of how I see the future evolving. I have accounts with a number of private wealth banks. I have a long history in asset management, over 30 years. And essentially what I've seen is that historically it's a top-down approach in wealth. You have a CIO or you have an organization that has a particular vision for where an asset allocation should be or a particular approach to building wealth. And it goes from the top down without recognition of what that client actually owns, what their demographic issues are, what their family issues are. Yes, there's IFAs and individual advisors that try to understand, but they don't really have a great picture. The future is technology that enables a proper recognition of the person's actual goals and actual risk profile and actual ability to build wealth in a risk-adjusted manner that's appropriate for that individual. So a very analytically driven, bottoms-up driven, knowing the customer through technology, through aggregation, what we can call it open finance, we can call it, various things. But that will enable a much more holistic approach to understanding that client. And then it's about education and matching the client's needs and goals to what's available out there. And that, again, is going to be technology. Whether you want to call it an eBay approach or an Amazon approach, there's going to be more of an exchange approach to connecting people to what's actually appropriate for them. And so you're going to see a trend towards that over time. It may not happen overnight, but ultimately, that is what democratization, fractionalization, and next generation technology is going to enable. And that's going to be the game changer. Now, Bill Gates always says we overestimate what could happen in 5 years and underestimate what could happen in 10 years. And I think that's what's going to happen in the wealth space. We're going to see a dramatic change. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when, but it's all about the combination of people and technology empowering prosperity in a next generation manner. And it's coming. It's on the way. There's a lot of people working on it. And as a bank, we want to be at the crux of that. So we're a bank at the core with trust, credibility, validation. Bank of England's a great regulator. And on top of that, layering in these capabilities to enable people in an incremental fashion to arrive at a holistic solution.
Okay, very interesting indeed. And I think, one thing we didn't really touch on, but I think, both you and Gareth sort of almost alluded to it is, all of this research saying that, the millennial generation, they're obviously going to, see this huge wealth transfer, talking globally. William, from your perspective, would you say that, you're obviously working with lots of different clients sort of across the industry, and would you say from your position that people are really starting to take this sort of, as Mintu said, evolution and erosion sort of issue, i.e. really are people concerned that they need to be at the forefront of having the digital experience, and are, I guess, people like traditional firms worried about it?
I wouldn't necessarily say they're worried. They are embracing technology. I think this area is kind of getting back to the theme, but ripe for change. I think there's all sorts of themes popping up, and a lot of them seem to be geared more towards the end user experience. That is the absolute critical importance now. Whether it's just having a digital presence, such as like a shiny, all singing, all dancing website, or actually automating and digitizing that initial client onboarding experience, and then through that getting onto that, okay, the day-to-day management of that client. And Bobby from the previous talk actually mentioned something quite pertinent that stuck with me. He mentioned his expectations as a client and how they're evolving as well. And I think one of the things that our clients are embracing is the element of change with the ever evolving client requirements as well. So it's, yeah, I wouldn't say they're fearful; they're embracing it. But we tend to serve more of the, what I would class the traditional wealth management market, which is predominantly discretionary, but again, an ultra high net worth as well. And yeah, they're fully open and ready for it. It's just, okay, where do we start? What do we start with? And I think the focus really, like I mentioned before, is on that end client experience.
Okay, interesting. Gareth, from your point of view, what's the sort of the private wealth customer at the moment sort of crying out for in terms of an improved digital experience? I mean, we heard from Free Trade earlier. We did a session looking at neo-broking, but I would say that to some extent they're relevant just for their UX. It's got an amazing iPad app, for example. Hargreaves Lansdown doesn't have an iPad app. Maybe that's my own personal preferences being shining through. But what do you think people are crying out for? Do they want that that personal touch? Do they is it still very much based on personal relationships, maybe over years or decades, or is it more of a better digital experience that people want?
Okay, let's stimulate the debate a little bit here on some of these things. So if we look at the average age of a client in wealth management, they're typically 63, 64, 65, something like that. McKinsey would tell you that's increasing. I looked at my left earlier and I found this wonderful book, which is a great read. Got to do a book recommendation, The 100-Year Life. So if you've not read that, that's a fantastic read by Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott. But what does that tell me? Well, I've got a 64-year-old client. He's going to live to 100 years. That's fantastic. If it's a male, a little bit less. If it's a female, a little bit longer, perhaps. Right. So then we assume, well, what does the current customer want? And that's kind of a little bit of the classic Mintu did the Bill Gates, let's do Henry Ford, asking your customers what they want, and they're going to say faster horses. So I think we need to be careful about, William was talking a lot about customer experience, and is that iPad app really important, or is there something else that you want to do in that space? And this is kind of the job. What is that private wealth customer trying to achieve? Now, some of these things are simple. If I think of Brewendorf 15, 20 years ago, you'd need to ring us for evaluation. You'd need to, and we'd prepare you on, and we'd send it out, and it'd be beautifully bound, and it would be all in paper, and I'm sure you'd love it, and we'd push that out the door, and that would answer your question. And now, of course, we want that instantaneous valuation. We want to see that. But the request didn't really, or the job didn't really change. I wanted to know how much the value was. So I think you can miss the mark here by deciding it's an all singing, all dancing set of apps, etc. And that can also be dangerous. Do you want your £5 million customer on a discretionary basis suddenly selling key holdings or whatever and giving them transactional portals? So I think we've got to kind of think a little bit back to this and think what's going to make a difference. What's going to make a difference to that customer's life? We've got to stop, I think, thinking this is only a millennial problem. I think those that are in their 60s, and there was some great work done by Vanguard a few years ago in the States that said 18 to 24-year-olds were and 65-plus-year-olds were no more or less digitally engaged with their finances than each other in those age group, which is really interesting because it's really powerful. It's in the moment. It's relevant. I'm 65. I'm retiring, and I'm 18 to 24. I'm interested. So how do we bring that together? And how do we really think about some of these things to both attract the next generation, but also make those relationships, and it was mentioned in the panel before, less about perhaps the individual, more about, creating those experiences where the customer really sees that value. And each customer will see slightly different things. I thought, what Mintu was talking about earlier about being multi-banked, but providing highly valuable services in those areas. It is about looking towards that. It is about looking and saying, do I have to do everything? No, I perhaps don't. How do I link in to my consumers' finances? How do I link into their, again, John from Investec was talking about the different assets. How do we bring that together? So I think that's all, bringing that together. I mean, certainly we want to be, in the next 5 years, certainly a digitally enabled wealth manager, starting to put that through. But it doesn't mean that you have to get rid of your current clients. It doesn't mean you don't need to think about the millennials, but it does mean you need to think quite deeply about the job that needs to be done. And that could just be, Daniel wants an iPad app, and we can see everyone wants an iPad app, deploy an iPad app. And it could be something like, how do you link into evaluation of fine wine, classic cars, paintings, etc. But it's that deep understanding. And I know I've made a long point here, and we've got to get William and Mintu into this discussion. But also, I think we've got to think about the wealth bandings. And if you look at globally, I think people are quite comfortable with a 40,000 number, $40,000, 40,000 euros, 40,000 pounds being looked after digitally, fully enabled, etc. When that's your future, your children's future, your family's future, that's $500,000. Do you want fully digital? And I think we need to explore that in the debate and see where we are.
Okay, very, very good. Lots in there. Mintu, I'm going to sort of just sort of almost not pivot the question, but just add in, is there like an inherent tension between, I guess, really good quality digital experiences and I guess niche services, nonetheless lucrative ones, i.e. appealing to a smaller subset, which I guess you could say is maybe the reason why we haven't seen as much happening in the sort of private wealth space in fintech. Like the best apps are ones that are made at scale, I guess, is what I'm saying. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that the traditional argument that you need to have a personal relationship or a face-to-face relationship with your wealth manager is something that we're seeing change quite a bit. We think that technology can deliver a more secure, immersive, better, rich experience than the face-to-face experience. Certainly in Premier Banking, where you're just sitting in front of behind a computer while somebody's punching in things that they should already know about you. But in the private wealth side as well, I believe that technology is going to change things quite a bit. In our app, we're doing in-app video. We're doing co-browsing, so we can actually see the customer's screen and actually support them through any questions that they have. And the pandemic has accelerated things quite a bit. I would say we've moved 5 to 10 years ahead in terms of digital adoption. And on the demographic side, while I think 64 is now a middle-aged person, I think that, we're going to see the entire range of demographics. I see 70-year-olds saying, why do I want to stand in a bank queue? I'm very happy to use a phone. Now, I think that the thing to consider is that technology is moving very, very rapidly. Algorithms are getting much more robust. And the cost to income ratio historically of delivering to clients the type of service they want was at that, 750 million, 2 million, 3 million level. That's collapsing. So I think that the cost of technology and the robustness of it and the ability to deliver an immersive experience, the ability to deliver control. So people like to have more control over their finances. The ability to see your entire wealth is something that people really want to have. They feel very strongly about that. And the reduction of frictions, costs related to, what Vanguard, Fidelity, BlackRock did for asset management is going to happen for high net worth as well. Because people, if they can have the same products and services and a great experience for a minuscule fraction of the price, they'll take it. Now, there will still be a community that says, I still want that club feel. I still want that exclusivity. But there's other ways to deliver that. And those will be where the super app, sort of comes in. So where you can bundle things that are actually absolutely unique. For example, let's say, a lot of mass affluent have never heard of medevac. The ability to get evacuated medically by helicopter or airplane, because that's always been an ultra high net worth type of insurance product. But if you can democratize that and deliver it on an app, who's not going to want to have access to that? So you can bring things at a larger scale to a much larger world. So you can bring the ultra high net worth service spectrum to the mass affluent because you're dealing with much less friction, much less sort of lumpiness, and that fractionalization, democratization is going to have profound impacts on what people actually see as the services and opportunities for them to grow and really maintain, secure their wealth.
I just meant to come in on the back of that. There was one thing we said there about face-to-face advice and stuff, and I do agree with you. And I think the pandemic has been very helpful to prove that people can deal digitally, and it's across all age demographics. It's not just one or the other. But I do think that we have to think about the role of the advisor. So while I would support, a face-to-face move into a more video experience, for example, I think actually having an advisor there or having human contact is really important. One of the most popular innovations in our D2C platform for our execution-only clients was actually nothing to do with digital. It was just simply putting the telephone number in the top right-hand corner and making sure it's displayed at all time. When you need us, we're there. That's what we're effectively saying to those individuals. And again, many people don't call is the honest answer, because to Mintu's very well made point, we want to take out friction, we want to make it seamless, we want to make it efficient, we want to do all of those things. But guess what? They know they can, and that gives them very confident. And that's a very human trait.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think the one thing that I didn't touch upon, which is another side of the coin that you did, Gareth, which is the advisors, they actually can benefit from the technology as well. They can be more empowered, more enabled, more educated, more capable when they have the tools that are actually delivering to them the right products to be talking about and being able to discuss them in a way that's really fulsome in knowledge. That is something that is going to be, very, very powerful. Make the client more educated, capable of understanding where they want to go, but also having the advisors really understanding that and being able to deliver the things that are really appropriate, rather than the classic top-down, it's on our platform, this is what we're selling, so this is what I'm talking to you about.
And the best example of that, of course, or an example of that is, of course, Netflix. And that's not financial advice, but it starts to know what I want. So it serves the content I'm interested in. I've seen the social media companies do that. If we could use the data that we have on our clients and those interactions and extend into open banking, bring in all of those other things, that's a much greater, richer conversation. And to Mintu's point, here's a balanced portfolio for you that will run through. And I think that gives us it shouldn't, what you said earlier about not being worried, it shouldn't worry us, I don't think. I think it should excite us about the opportunities we can therefore deliver.
Absolutely. I think one thing to add to that, and we have mentioned it a few times now, is the user experience. The online aspect still has a long way to go. If you take a look back at when the kind of the iPhone first burst on the scene, it was a disruptor in the mobile comm space, not because it could do anything differently. It's because it made things much easier. And staying on that analogy, nothing was new. We had digital cameras, we had MP3 players, we had mobile phones. But this integrated and pulled that together, not just physically, but in the way you interact with them as well. And it kind of loosely ties into the point you bring with Netflix there. It's learning from you, making recommendations based on your personal preferences, and I suppose enabling and arming the IFA, the planner, the manager, with a lot more information about this is stuff they should really know at the end of the day.
But the iPhone story is brilliant, because my favorite thing about that is if you read some of the articles about when it was being panned, it hasn't got a keyboard, and that's the type of thing I think we need to remind ourselves of. What was the customer trying to do? Type something in. Traditionally, that was done by a keyboard with, the Blackberries or whatever, the Nokias, whatever it was at the time. And we brought a whole new way of thinking to that. And I think that's what we've got to do. So some of this is simply freeing our minds, unlearning what we've learned, perhaps, to kind of move forward with these. And again, thinking back to what was the client trying to do.
Okay, very interesting. Let's just refocus on the pandemic. And what it has done to the private wealth market. Obviously, we have seen people being unable to go into the I guess the typical face-to-face meetings that ultimately you're paying for in the private wealth market. and also, maybe also some of the benefits that come along with that. Invitations into the office for events and all those sorts of things. Has that been a important headwind, I guess, for the traditional providers of private wealth services? What are your thoughts there? Minty, do you want to perhaps start with that?
Well, I might suggest that Gareth could be a better candidate to speak to it, because we're really in build mode here. So we haven't been doing the client interface through the pandemic, but we have done a lot of surveys and talking to customers, and so we've gotten the sense that people are very digitally oriented, ready to do things digitally, but they still do want experiences. They are looking forward to actually having those, wine tastings and other events. But I think Gareth can speak to this probably better.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess the key thing, if you look at the headline level, Daniel, you were talking about our numbers at the start. We've had record inflows into our business. So in respect, our headwind has become a tailwind to us, I guess, in some of those areas. I think in terms of that experience, we do events, and that's what our clients enjoy, and along coming down. So we've moved those to virtual events. It's very interesting in that you suddenly dial up an event. It might have been 100 people in an office, and then it's now 1,000 people across the country, and that's been very interesting for those. But clients have wanted that. They wanted that escape from what has been a torturous time for us all. So we've continued to do that, and we've had lots of new opportunities, lots of new businesses. If I think of the IFA world, we've had a lot of IFAs who have looked at their business model and said that they need to do a lot more in the client space and less in the investment space. So sub that out to us. So I think from us it's been beneficial. For those, we have had to pivot the virtual event, for example, but overall, I think it's left us in a very, very good position.
Excellent stuff. Just before we go to some audience questions, I do have the poll results. I'm not quite sure if they're ready yet. Actually, no, apologies, not quite yet. So let's just go to an audience question. So this one is from Oliver Smith, my colleague, who asks to Mintu and Gareth specifically: are you concerned about mass market fintechs? Let's call them super apps. Could one day become serious contenders in this space? Gareth, do you want to maybe start with that one?
Yeah, I guess if we look at it, can they become fintechs now, or do we worry about them? Yes is the honest answer. I look at all of these things and say they could come and disrupt us. It would be very simple for us to be the Blockbuster to the Netflix, for example. That's a very simple thing. It doesn't, we've had robo-advice as a threat for such a long time in this area, but I think I'm not really a fan of pitting the fintechs up against the incumbents and go and have that fight. I think it's how do we work with that? And if we think about good quality financial technology, which is ultimately the origins of the word, we can certainly work with that over time. But I'd be very keen to look and see, the opportunities that come from this, and also how do we pivot? How do we move forward with some of these things? How do we move our thinking and strategy and culture forward to take advantage of those areas? So yes, I do worry about. I spend a lot of time looking across the market, seeing what's happening in the States and Asia and other areas. But again, I think from our point of view, we've got that trust, we've got that service, we've got those long-standing relationships. How do we use those to amplify? How do we use fintechs to amplify that opportunity?
Okay, very interesting. And Minty, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that so one thing that I'll highlight is that the business models of a lot of fintechs are unfortunately not very sustainable. I think that a lot of them have a focus on very, very low margin, high velocity types of strategies, which I don't believe are unfortunately going to succeed for very long. You have a very deep and long J curve in those technologies, and that's really problematic when you're trying to build for the long run. So there were lots of search engines out there when .com was going strong. Google was founded during the collapse, but Google was profitable right out of the box, and they were able to really continue to plow profits into into various other things and become very successful because that profit engine was there. So at Monument, we're really focused on making sure that we have a profitable proposition, not immediately, but in a relatively short time frame, because we're focused on high value, low velocity, where the service provision is actually justified and you can make a very, very solid ROE. And now we will try to build into other areas. I think the Google analogy may break down pretty quickly. I don't think we'll be able to do that. It'd be nice, but I think what you could look at is someone like in China, a WeChat, or in Singapore, a Grab, as an example of someone that could grow into being a very, very robust competitor. Now, can we do that for the mass affluent? We'd like to think we could, but let's take, for example, what WeChat has started with and what they're doing. They started with a money transfer proposition, and then they essentially started to layer in things like food delivery. You can order a car service, Didi or whatever is local. And they essentially started to envelop with payments and financial infrastructure at the core, a super app proposition that's actually very high utility. I think that if one could do that for the mass affluent, you would have a very, very powerful engine. You would have something that, so the mass affluent's an 80 trillion market in globally, 6 trillion in the UK. You're going to be very well compensated if you succeed in that. But the issue is picking the right spots and layering in the right services in the right order, and to keep that cost to income ratio at a level that is really appropriate. And so what Google does really well is they try things and then they abandon them quickly when they don't make money or fit. So I think that's the right way to do it. And I think that's the approach we're going to take. But it's, again, a long road. I don't think it's going to be overnight. I think it is going to be, a lot of hard work to find the right things to layer in, but it will happen eventually.
Excellent. Thanks, Mintu. I'm sorry, I've got to just quickly wrap things up just because we're very swiftly running out of time. We do have our poll ready now, I believe. So nice segue from your mention of super apps. The future of digital wealth, will it be super apps or standalone platforms? A decisive just over 2/3 say it will be super apps. Super apps with a quarter saying standalone platforms, and just under 10% something else. So that is obviously all we've got time for today. I think that's our last session of the day. Gareth, Mintu, William, thank you so much for all of your really interesting insights, and look forward to hearing more about what you're all up to, hopefully next year.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Oliver Smith, who I believe is coming on stage.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, really, really interesting session there. And that is a wrap for this afternoon. I think I've got a couple of slides that I'll stick up quickly. We've covered a huge amount of ground during this Digital Wealth Forum, from neobanking to ESG investing, open finance, and just then a bit on private wealth. And we've been joined by 16 excellent speakers to take us through that. I'd like to say a thank you to all of those speakers, as well as our sponsors, Wealth Kernel, Contemi Wealth Management, TrueLayer, and Money Hub, who've all joined us this afternoon. If you've enjoyed the afternoon, I'd really recommend taking a look on altfi.com. In particular, we have recently launched our Alternative Lending State of the Market report. Touches on some of the themes we've mentioned today, but not all of them. And while you're there, why not subscribe to one of our newsletters? We've got our daily and our weekly newsletter, and we've got lots of events and things coming up later in the year that we'll be announcing very soon. The best place to stay up to date and be the first to know is to subscribe to one of our newsletters. And that just leaves it to me to thank you, our audience, for taking part today. Thank you for asking great questions and for voting in our polls. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.